Joining us now from Vancouver is broadcaster and commentator Anita Krishna. Anita, thank you for joining us on Power Hour. Mark Carney has won Canada's federal election, securing a fourth term for the Liberal Party, and with almost all votes counted, results show that Liberals are on 168 electoral districts, followed by the Conservatives with 144. And it was certainly a turnaround. Just 3 months ago, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre looked certain to sweep the polls, and he's now lost his seat in the Ontario district of Carleton to Liberal Bruce Fanjoy. Let's look at Mark Carney, who took over from Justin Trudeau when he resigned. Here he is insisting that he's going to bring climate change to the heart of every financial decision.
You demanded action, and now it's time for the financial sector to deliver. To reach net zero, every country, every company, every bank, every investor, every pension fund around the world will need to make some big changes. In the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow, we have an enormous opportunity to bring climate change into the heart of every financial decision.
Anita, what is Canada going to get with Mark Carney?
I don't think we even wanted him. And I think we're just going to get nothing but illusions. I mean, it was very true that everybody was absolutely fed up with Trudeau. We were ready to get rid of him. And Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives had this amazing lead. They had riled up the country. There was such a groundswell of support. And then very secretly, well, not secretly, but Trudeau just kind of passed the baton to this man. And this man came in and just clinched it and cinched it. And he did a lot of sort of sneaky, underhanded things that the mainstream media here didn't report on. And this managed to just gloss over all these things, all the things about net zero, all his history to get him elected. It was staggering. And it was also the fear of Trump that really sealed the deal for his win.
It's interesting, and I want to get into Trump's effect in a moment, but just on Mark Carney's record, he's gone on television pushing for taxes on flying due to climate change. Here he is.
But shouldn't we be flying less now?
We should be taking into account the impact of our flying on the planet now. And that's
for pushing up the tax on flying.
You push up the tax on flying, you push up the cost on transport, and that's in part what putting a price on carbon is.
So do Canadians know what they've signed up for?
I do not think that Canadians understand what we've signed up for. And earlier you played the clip of him at COP24, and he basically says, I mean, Michael Bloomberg is part of it's on Bloomberg TV, right? But basically COP24 is the COP26 rather, UN climate change conference in Glasgow, where he was saying there will be punishments to financial institutions if the emissions of their clients are not up to snuff in a way. They want to do everything to keep oil in the ground, coal not burning. They're not for pipelines. They're not for oil and gas. They're for all electric. And that is never spoken about in the mainstream media. I mean, he literally is a net zero zealot. And you think, well, what are you hoping to accomplish? By 2050, he wants us to be in a net zero world. Does that mean you don't drive a car? You don't fly in a plane? You don't heat your home? You don't have a hot shower? I mean, all these basic things, these are never spoken about in the media, but these are his beliefs. And these beliefs, I believe, are for him to gain such massive control, because he has control over world banks, leaders. I mean, you put these stipulations on these financial institutions because you punish them for their emissions, and you are in power. I mean, he's a very powerful person. And do we really think that he gave everything up? He left, Brookfield Asset Management, which is like a BlackRock, to give everything up to come and save Canada? If Canadians can't see that he's an installation, then the wool is just completely being pulled over their eyes. And I think that that's exactly what's happened. The wool was pulled over their eyes. He was, touted as this financial genius, this, former former banker. He was a former banker, the governor of England, the bank, governor of the Bank of Canada. But he is really a complete climate activist, but only not for good gain. It's not like he really believes in this. He has no problem buying a pipeline in the UAE or in South America, but he will shut down Canadian pipelines. He had totally approved of killing the Northern Gateway pipeline, but yet he'll buy a pipeline somewhere else. He's all for this Bill 69, which is and he will not repeal that, which means that we cannot cultivate our oil and gas in Canada. He's a man that claims to want to, he'll fix all the problems with Trump. But really, Canadian jobs, Canadian oil, we have suffered under the Liberals. And I don't think that Canadians understand just what they've elected. He touts himself as a climate activist, that net zero is going to protect the world. Why will it protect the world? We're in Canada. Half our country is all wilderness. I live in a rainforest. The world has gotten greener since. The carbon is good for the planet, but he has guilted a nation, guilted the world into thinking that climate is bad, carbon is bad. But you need carbon.
And you mentioned the media bias. It's, of course, everywhere. Canada appears to be no exception. We were just having a look this morning. Here's a journalist from the CBC asking Conservative Pierre Poilievre if he would actually step aside and not compete.
Do you believe the government's promise of $155 billion in counter tariffs is enough? And what would you do differently to get the president to change course? And to clarify your last question, are you saying that you would step aside and not compete for the head of the country to allow us to get through this crisis? Or I'm unclear about your answer to the last question.
Well, I find it a strange question. Your CBC is asking me to step aside in the next election. It's a very strange request. No, we're not going to suspend democracy. The Canadian people run this country, and they will choose the next Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to get a bit more of your assessment of the media bias that just appears to be everywhere, even in Canada, and also the role that the media played in pushing this anti-Trump narrative. I suppose, what role did Donald Trump play in this election?
I believe that Donald Trump played a massive role. I mean, his chiding, his teasing us. He was teasing us. He was obviously teasing Trudeau. He didn't take him seriously at all if he's sitting there calling him the governor. He was just sort of shaking the sheets of Canada that need to be shook, right? Basically, he started to threaten with the tariffs because he wanted us to clean up our borders because of fentanyl getting through. And he's absolutely right. We don't check our ports. We don't check our borders. We don't have the infrastructure in place or the manpower in place. And so a lot gets through. And in the media, they had said it's only 1%. It's only 1%. Well, it's only 1% that's caught. We really need a lot more checks and balances. We have massive fentanyl drug labs up here. And so Trump was right. And so, but people started to take this as a complete attack on our sovereignty, what turned out just to be teasing from Trump. If you don't understand Trump, that he's a teaser, that he's having a bit of fun, and you lose your mind over it. That's a big problem. And the media absolutely propelled that because the media is so good at fear. We're so good at COVID fear, and we were so good at making Trump the big bad wolf. And Carney was going to come in and save the day. He was the only one that could save us from the big bad wolf. And then the thing is, he never went and talked to Trump. He still hasn't really spoken to Trump face to face.
Oh, look, well said. Before we move on from Mark Carney, here's a clip of him dancing at an after party following his election victory. Want to know what your thoughts are? He's not being elected because of his dance moves. He's being compared to failed vice presidential candidate Tim Walz there. What do you make of it?
Well, what catches my attention is his wife, Diana Fox Carney, with her elbows up. That was their big thing. Get your elbows up. And it's like a cross between that and doing some sort of bizarre chicken dance. It is very cringeworthy. I mean, I don't know if you saw, he came and did commercials with promos with Mike Myers. Get your elbows up, and that was their big thing. You know, fight, fight, fight. We've got a crisis. Everybody, and so everybody is doing this. You know, and it's utterly ridiculous. But I do feel very sad that Poilievre didn't make it in. I mean, it was a 2-horse race, and he was the horse that I wanted. You know, he was similar to Trump, but that he made sense. And because there was such a massive Canadian backlash to Trump, that kind of just sunk it for him. And it seemed out of his control. And of course, the media does not support him because Poilievre said, I will defund the CBC. The CBC gets $1.2 billion of Canadian tax money every year. They don't turn a profit. They don't even put comments open on their YouTube channel. They purport to report for Canadians, but they really step all over the face of Canadians, and they're completely biased. And Carney came around and he said, I'm going to not only give you that, but I'm going to give you $150 million more dollars, and I'm actually going to make it statutory that there can be no changes to CBC funding unless it passes Parliament. That's how much he is sucking up to CBC, and CBC, by golly, they wanted him to get in, and they did everything they could to just smear Pierre, which was totally unfortunate because a lot of us believe his campaign was from the heart, and we wanted change. You know.
Anita, finally, I just want to talk to you once again about climate change, seeing as Canada has a big focus on it. And this week's blackout across Spain and Portugal were caused by an outage on a grid mostly powered by wind and solar. Energy experts had been warning that Spain and Portugal's growing reliance on renewables left their grids vulnerable to major blackouts. I mean, were you surprised?
Oh, this is a crazy story. I think they changed their power grids, and I think it was between 50 or 80% went to this new renewable energy. And look what happened. People were in blackouts. People were stuck in elevators. You imagine you have a power outage in the hospital, and then the press, the media, once again released headlines saying, no, it's not likely that it was the renewable energy source. Well, what else was it? I mean, more testing has to be done. And this absolute fanaticism of not using oil and gas and traditional power resources is not working. And, you know, you can maybe use a bit of solar in Spain because they have a lot of sun. You cannot use solar in Canada. We just don't have enough sun for that. And to have ridiculous wind turbines going, it's a major environmental waste, but they don't sell it that way. And it's just so sad to see this immense blackout in Spain. It just must have been horrible for people.
Absolutely.
You know, it's obviously not working.
No, absolutely not, and we're seeing that play out. But you know, good luck, Canada. That's all I have to say. Broadcaster and commentator Anita Krishna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Gabriella.